the next 12 months, we made 9 million. So we went from 0 to 9 million in 1 year. And I realized, wow, I have enough money in my bank account to live for quite a long time without needing to work. And I'm just 19 years old right now. I'm supporting myself, living on my own, paying all of my bills. So not a bad position to be 19 years old with no debt, ton of money in the bank.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, guys. So thanks for joining in and thanks for looking in. Today we have Troy Buckholdt. Troy is the founder and CEO of Course Careers. Troy's mission is changing the way education is done and how you start your careers. So Troy, we're going to get into everything you guys do currently with Course Careers, but the way we like to start these conversations off is just to get a little bit to know about you and kind of how everything started with you. So if you can, talk to me about who Troy was maybe in elementary school as a kid. Talk to me a little about that.
Yeah, who was I as a kid? So I guess growing up, I had a lot of freedom. So I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and I have memories of where I would hang out with my friends. We'd play this game called Manhunt, where it's like at night, everyone tries to to find everyone or like capture the flag, just big group neighborhood events, and really fun. But I grew up with a lot of freedom, I'd say that. So I remember in like third grade, after school, I'd walk like a couple miles to like where other people from my school lived. I'd hang out with them, and then I'd come back at 9 p.m. And my parents didn't say otherwise. And just my whole life, I guess I've really lived in more of that free range environment, and I think that probably played a role into the personality and my risk tolerance now.
So it's interesting. I'm in the process. It's been a long time I've been reading this book, but I am reading a book about how to raise successful grown-ups. And one of the things they talk about in that, which is the lost art of having a free-range kid, and how in today's society, almost every parent is scared about giving their kid the freedom to go and make the mistakes and to do the things they might need to do to, build that risk tolerance that you have. When you were a kid, did you know that was something that, is that something that you found valuable? Is that something you found good thing? Was it something you didn't like? Talk to me about your view of it as a child and maybe if that changed since you've now grown up.
Yeah, I remember I used to go on just big adventures even in elementary school, actually, because I moved fourth grade to Atlanta. So this has to be in Florida. So I'm in elementary school. I must be like 7 or 8 years old. And I would go out into the woods all day with my friends, like miles deep. We'd go on kayaks. We'd go over the ponds. There's gators in the water. So you kind of have to, look out for yourself to not get eaten. There's spiders, snakes. You have to keep an eye out. So I think that instilled in me some sense of like self-responsibility, where I think a lot of kids nowadays, if you're very closely parented and guarded, you don't have to watch out for yourself because your parents are watching out for you. But in my case, it wasn't like that. And I almost couldn't imagine if my parents tried to reverse it after I had that freedom. It's like, what do you mean I can't go out? What do you mean I have to come back before night? So I just really grew up, I guess, used to it.
Let me ask you this, and I'm sure Matt has a couple of questions because we're both fathers. So I've got a 4-year-old daughter. I've got a son who's about to be a year here in about a month. Do you have any kids yet, Troy?
No.
All right. So let's say you do have kids in the very near future. Do you envision you raising your kids the same way you were raised, or do you think that there's things that you would do differently in raising your kids now that you've become an adult and are raising a child? Would you do it exactly the same?
I think I would do it the same. Looking back at kayaking, on like an old kayak you find where there's, gators in the waters like that. Yeah, that is pretty risky. But so something like that, maybe I'd, want to know about or stop my kids from doing. But I do think people have, the world's a risky place. It's not a friendly place. You have to grow up knowing that as a kid, learn how to watch out for yourself, develop your own ambitions. I think even Jeff Bezos says that, like, growing up, he used to work in a shop a lot. And I've worked with my grandpa in his shop with power tools. you got to watch out. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not funny business when you can cut your finger off. And I think it's important for kids to learn that sense of self, responsibility, that you are taking risks for yourself. You're in charge of watching out for yourself. You have to be strong and be tough, and that's just part of growing up.
Yeah, 100%. Like he was saying, like I have three boys, so I feel like I don't have a choice, letting them kind of make their own mistakes. And right now, I let them fight each other. I'm like, all right, you
Yeah.
guys, like I break them when it gets really bad, but they just every 20 seconds they want to go at it. Sometimes it's like, all right, you guys gotta, work stuff out. And I think about it as a kid, like I had that sort of freedom as well. And in my neighborhood, where nowadays I probably wouldn't have my kids have the freedom in that neighborhood if I was living in there right now, but back in the day, it just felt like everything was different back then. And where you can just kind of go out and when the street lights come on, you just make your way home. You climb across fences to other people's yards and go and do other things and take the risk, like you said. And I think that does instill some kind of risk tolerance for you and to know to go out there and take those risks and you learn on your own with your friends and when you get hurt. Um, so that's a really interesting point you brought up because as a parent now you do want to be like I want to protect my kid. When he's climbing up on something really high, you're like all right, I got to stop you this for if something happens. Sometimes you got to be like all right, you're gonna figure out the natural consequences. So so how tell me how your parents were like too as well in general when they worked with you when they talked to you were they very strict? I mean obviously not on the you being out there, but as far as school and anything you did extracurricular activities and stuff like that. What kind of stuff did your parents get into with you on those?
I guess my parents were as hands off as probably could be, where there was very little parental oversight. Um, yeah, I mean, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she didn't really, I guess, try to manage me by any means. So yeah, I've mostly spent a lot of time with friends that I made from school or just out and about. I'd hang out with them. I'd come back at night. My mom wouldn't get angry at me. What time are you coming back? Why is it so late?
Mhm.
And I'm 7, 8 years old at that point. So if you can only imagine, by the time I'm in high school, I'd be gone for a couple days and
Oh, yeah.
I'd come back, and that's just the way it is.
Mm,
And there was no pressure to like have to get certain grades or do certain extracurricular activities. Is really all up to me what I wanted to do. Uh, I guess did do pretty well being self-sufficient. I guess when I was so young, where by the time I got to middle school and high school, my parents aren't too worried about me. I think in middle school, actually, there was a point where I got addicted to video games, specifically this game called League of Legends.
mm,
I remember I was really, really good at it, and I'd play it for 12 hours a day. And I was doing pretty well in school at that point. I think this is like seventh grade, and I just stopped going to school. So I'd learned about Khan Academy, and I remember I could go on Khan Academy, I could learn all about a topic in a couple hours, and I learned more than what I would sitting in a classroom for weeks. So I would just
wow.
show up, I'd take a test, I'd score 100, uh, and then I'd go home and not show up to school anymore. And it got to the point where I probably an entire school year in seventh grade, I only showed up only for the tests, which is a
Wow.
very small fraction. I was surprised they even let me graduate because my grades were still very strong for my test scores, even though I didn't do any of the assignments or show up. But I guess my mom, she was kind of concerned about that, but at the same point, I'm doing well. I know the material. So I would just be at home. I'd play video games. My mom actually wrote me excuse letters. She'd always write down like the nastiest things, like something's wrong with like Troy's bowel system, so he has to stay at home today just to mess with me.
Yeah.
But I guess she always kind of had my back and let me do what I wanted to do and what I thought best.
I have to give you a lot of credit though, because I've seen kids who've had that kind of parenting style and they go completely the wrong way. And you stayed on course and, and even though you played video games that long, you still had the sense to, hey, let me go and learn something real quick so I can go and pass these tests. And you would see kids that just not even bother with school. Like, I don't even care. So I have to give you some credit for that. That's pretty interesting how you took that on yourself and you had some sense of independence to do that. Um, yeah,
And
that's
I'm sure too, like, if I was doing really poor in school and I wasn't doing well on the test, there probably would have been a lot more pressure for
yeah,
me to start going to school again. So I think there were some guardrails there. They
yeah,
weren't clearly defined though. It was more of like, okay, mom, look, I'm doing good on my tests. I know my stuff. I'm gonna graduate. Do well on any like coursework. I'm top of my class.
hmm
So it's like I had I guess, leverage in the negotiation to say, hey, let me just stay home and play these video games because, what else do you expect of me? I'm a good kid.
It's interesting. I think when Matt and I have these conversations with successful entrepreneurs, one of the common themes I find is that those people typically didn't do well in the traditional school system. They typically also identify with when they find something they love, they master it, they run towards it. And if they aren't interested, they typically could care less about doing it well or being successful. That is, to me, something that was definitely a part of my ground up story. Man, I was super into sports. I knew every statistic of every game of all of this. And man, because I liked it, I could memorize it. I knew it. But if you had to ask me about something I couldn't care less about, you couldn't gather 3 minutes of my attention for me to act like I cared about it. Is that a similar experience you've had as you've kind of gone into more of the career field, the education field in a outside of the normal way? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd say I have a very obsessive personality. So it's like I don't get obsessed over too many things, but when I do, I get very obsessed. Like League of Legends, I got very obsessed, like morning to night. I'm the best. I remember at 15 years old, I wanted to be a bodybuilder. By age 16, I was the biggest kid in freshman year. So, so it's just, work out 3 times a day, perfect, eating perfect, everything just done to a T. So, and I don't know, that's who I am. And I guess that probably is fairly similar among successful entrepreneurs where you live in a specialized world. You have to do something better than everyone else you're competing against. So being very obsessed on one thing is a good way to outcompete others.
Yeah. So let's talk about that transfer of from being a child into becoming an adult. Who was the young adult version when school was over, when you put down the League of Legends sticks and you'd said, I needed to be a grown up now? What was that like? What was that transition into, getting out of the parents' house, getting a job, going that direction?
Yeah, I'd say I made the decision maybe around 14 years old that I wanted to get rich. It's like I want to be rich when I grow up, and I became very obsessed about that idea. And then I think I started optimizing my life towards that idea since then. Um, so I was going to school. I remember in high school, I was on the math and science pathway where you become an engineer, and by default, you go to Georgia Tech, and that was like the path you're on in the Atlanta area. And I remember freshman year, I was going on down that path, and I was doing pretty well in school, definitely still top of class. But then I decided that I really don't want to go down the engineering route. I don't think that's the fastest route I can take to achieving my dreams of being extremely successful. So I made the decision to not go to college. I think at 15 years old, and I think that's really what changed the course of my life. Is now instead of optimizing towards good grades, good college, Ivy League, like the traditional path that a lot of people take to wanting to get rich, I was optimizing in a completely different direction of, okay, I'm not going to go to college, so I need to figure out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to be successful at that. So at 16 years old, I started learning about real estate on YouTube, watching those like guru videos about wholesaling, buying property, and it's a good way to get rich. So then I got my first car, so like an old Toyota Tacoma 1999. I was driving that to real estate meetings, showing up, learning all about it. And then somewhere along the way, someone mentioned like mobile homes because my parents weren't supporting me at this point. I was working at a restaurant, just doing the bare minimum in school, knowing I'm not going to go to college, which for me was just very easy, couple hours a week. So I had a whole lot of free time to figure things out. Um, and was going to those real estate meetings, and someone mentioned that you could buy mobile homes as personal property as long as they're on a mobile home park.
Yep.
So I thought that was very interesting because I know I'm not able to actually buy real estate and my parents aren't going to co-sign for it. I was actually in the process of trying to get emancipated so I could buy real estate. But then the loan originator said I wouldn't qualify for an FHA loan because you at least have to be 18 years old even if you are emancipated. So I was doing everything under my belt to try to make things happen. But then I got hooked on that idea of mobile homes. Okay, I can buy this asset as a minor. So at a real estate meeting, I met a chiropractor who was looking to invest some money. I convinced him about mobile homes, and we went to a mobile home park. And I read a book about mobile homes called like Lonnie Deals, which is a way to flip mobile homes on a mobile home park. So you don't actually own the land, you just own the mobile home. And I implemented what I learned in the book, and it worked. I bought two mobile homes. I turned like $1,000 into $40,000 in a single month. And then after doing that, I was like, okay, I could definitely scale from here. So now I have like a pretty consistent way to make 300K plus a year at 16 years old. And that really just set off my confidence levels and my risk tolerance, knowing that no matter what I do, I could at least make 300K a year.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned wholesaling. That's my business outside of what we also do with Matt over here too as well. And that's something that I've been growing and scaling. Um, so walk me through what got you into wholesaling in the first place. With when you were as a 16-year-old, obviously you want to make some money, but like you just like looking for anything possible that you can find to do. Have you ever been like that beforehand, where you started your own little businesses like lemonade stands and stuff like that, or just happened to be like 16-year-old? I'm gonna start learning how to do something on my own.
So, I mean, I always like, yeah, try to make money and like the idea of making money.
Yeah,
What was one of the, I did so many like things as a kid that
yeah,
it's hard to pinpoint any one thing. My big business was like the mobile home business at 16. That was the first thing that actually legitimately made money. Everything else before that was kind of just like, kid money.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, well, I guess what got me interested in mobile home was first being interested in real estate because of all those like fake gurus talking about how you can get rich in real estate and they want you to buy their course. Uh, and then I started showing up to the meetings, learned about mobile homes that way, read a book on it, just implemented like word for word exactly what it said, and it worked. Um, and then once it worked and I knew I could make more money, I actually decided not to continue in mobile homes because I kind of like, okay, this is my insurance. Kind of like people go to college as insurance, like, okay, I'm gonna get that degree just to be safe. It's like now I have insurance knowing that no matter what I do, at least I could have a six-figure income. So let me go, take some big shots.
After the mobile home investing, and when you made that transition to take those big shots, what was the next big shot you took after you kind of got that fallback plan, that degree in mobile home flipping and stuff?
Yeah, so at that point, I met someone who I guess kind of became my mentor. He used to run the port of Savannah, so like worked his way up the executive ladder, uh, yeah, pretty high up there, and he started mentoring me on what I should do in business. And he kept pushing me to sales. He's like, sales is where the money's at. All business is built on sales and people and relationships. Like even running a company is sales. You have to convince people to join your company, convince them to work hard and be successful. So learn sales, and that's gonna give you a really good foundation. Get your first job in sales. So after the mobile homes, I got a job selling signs. So I was selling signs to local businesses, just commission only. Didn't really make much money doing it, uh, but I learned the basics of sales. After that, I decided I want to get into sales development. Actually, no, before I decided wanted to get into sales development, I was 18 years old. So I was selling the signs, doing the mobile homes, and I was 18 years old. I had just graduated high school, and I was like, okay, what's my next move in life? Now that I'm 18, and no longer doing high school. So I decided I need to figure it out, and I need to figure it out fast. So it's like the one thing I knew I could do, or that I needed to do, is I needed to learn how to get tough, like really take risks, not be afraid to do big, bold things. I needed to learn to believe in myself. So I decided to go homeless, and I hitchhiked from my home in Atlanta all the way to San Francisco. And I did it without any money. So I just walked out of my house one day. I said, "Hey, mom, I'm gonna go hitchhike to San Francisco." She's like, "Good luck," kind of like joking, like there's no way you're doing that. And I ended up doing it. It took me a little over 2 months to do that. And yeah, I think that built up my self confidence, my risk tolerance, probably to a pretty extreme level. And during that process too, I met actually a couple of people from hitchhiking that worked in sales. I asked them about it, and that introduced me to sales development. So when I got back, I decided I'm going to start a career in sales development. Um, Learned everything about sales development, read it like every book ever written about it, watched every video about it. My hypothesis was like every single company at that point on their job descriptions, you need a bachelor's degree, and that's just the standard. Like sales development representative in what 2017, companies only hire recent graduates. There's no reason they wouldn't hire a recent graduate. There was no like online courses or boot camps that existed for it at that time. So I came up with this hypothesis. Well, what if my education perfectly matches their job description, and I know more than the person that's hiring me? Then, would they choose to hire me over this one requirement of being a recent graduate? It's like, I think they would. So I learned everything about it. And before I could even start applying to companies, I actually went to a networking event and I just talked with this one founder of a company. And he immediately hired me on the spot. And I did very well in that position.
Nice. Okay, so you did business development. Obviously, you couldn't be preaching more to the choir than to me as a guy who's built business development teams for the past 10 years for many companies and does a lot of coaching for people in those roles. Now, when did you transition what you learned in there to get that business development job to what you guys do today now at Course Careers?
Yeah, so actually, I left out a key part of my story. So it was when I was 16 years old, I decided I'm not going to go to college. And actually, in doing so, it like the college system really started to piss me off. I remember I was in, I think, history class, and a guidance counselor walks in and asks everyone, "Hey, could you please like raise your hand if you're planning on going to college?" And every single person in the class except me raised their hand. Then they said, "Could you please raise your hand if you don't plan on going to college?" I'm the only person. So you guys got to be kidding me. Like, have you seen what's going on with recent graduates right now? They're taking on all this debt. They can't get jobs.
Right.
It's not worth it. And I'm the only person who's planning on not going to college. So I thought, all these people are crazy. They don't actually know, what's going on, and companies are just blankly requiring a degree when they could be hiring people who actually have the skills and knowledge to do their job. So I made the decision that I'm gonna start a business that's gonna replace the college system. So I made that decision really young at 16. I didn't realize that was the way I was gonna, make it in life and get rich. But that was my like next goal. And then I worked backwards from that goal to say, okay, what type of business is going to replace the college system? It's going to be a tech company. So I made that decision.
Okay.
Then to start a tech company, what background do you need? I met the founder of a company called Rubicon. They have like a big trash. Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's like a trash tech company, kind of like Uber. And he advised me you could either become a software engineer or you could become a salesperson. You need one of those skills to start a tech company. And then I did the hitchhiking thing, and I learned about sales development, and then got in that way, with the ultimate goal of quitting that job to start Course Careers.
Okay. How long were you in that job before you started Course Careers? And then what did you do to solve the lack of software development skills?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was in that position, I want to say a year and a half, or just around that. So I started off sales development rep, um, just booking meetings. I did very well, booked a lot of calls. Then I think like 9 months in, got promoted to an account executive. And this company only sells enterprise. So essentially, I got promoted to an enterprise account executive, and started closing really big deals. Actually, the biggest deals in the company, like Home Depot, Medtronic, Luxottica, just really, really big deals. And then some very healthy commission checks rolled in. And I realized, wow, I have enough money in my bank account to live for quite a long time, without needing to work. And I'm just 19 years old right now. I'm supporting myself, living on my own, paying all of my bills. So not a bad position to be 19 years old with no debt, ton of
Yeah,
money in the bank. So I quit
absolutely.
the job and yeah, decided it's time to start Course Careers. I didn't know how I was going to do it though. So I still didn't figure out like any business model or how. I just had the idea I'm going to start a tech company to replace the college system. And I quit my job on that idea. Everything.
Little task. Just create a
Yeah.
tech company. You replace the college system. Got it. Okay. Got it.
Exactly. But yeah, everything else I still had to figure out, and I really had no clue where to start. I didn't know how to build a tech company, didn't know anything about software, didn't know anything about like business models and startups and MVPs, like nothing.
Okay. So, to make the tech company, I assume you had to kind of maybe bring some people in, hire, partner with some people that could help you build out the software or the technology.
Yeah, so our MVP was, maybe this will go in the history books. Or I guess before I even started the business, like let me give some backstory. I was living on my own. I was trying to, hustle. I was going to like the entrepreneur meetings, probably the way most people try to break into entrepreneurship, meet other entrepreneurs, talk with people about starting a business, try to come up with like a business plan. And it's like I wasn't making any progress, just spinning my wheels, right? Then I was like, okay, I need to save some money because, this could take a lot longer than I thought. So I moved back into my parents' house. I moved into the basement. So I'm living in my mom's basement now, 19 years old. And, it's like, damn, I kind of feel like a failure. I went from, being a successful salesperson, making a lot of money to now living in my mom's basement. And I had no clue what I was going to do to start this business. Like I was literally going to sleep crying, think I'm a failure. And that was like on
Right.
a weekly basis. So I guess if you have a big ego and you're not making progress, it doesn't feel good. Uh, so what did I do from there? I decided to write a book. So I was like, okay, I have no idea how I'm going to replace the college system. So let me just write a book breaking down this problem as closely as possible. I'm going to do every piece of research on why colleges exist, the history of it, how it works, how employers like hire recent graduates, why they do it, what they value. And I did that. And in writing that book called The Lean Career, I figured out, okay, the problem is you can't get an internship if you don't go to college. That's the core problem that I need to solve is that internship is the entry point to the entry level career, and internships only exist for college students. Now, if you get an internship without going to college and you get that experience, then employers would probably be willing to hire you, and an internship reduces that risk for the employer hiring someone without experience. So that internship was the problem that I identified as the entry point for starting careers that you currently couldn't get if you didn't go to college.
Makes sense. Okay. So let's talk about where that is now. So the idea becomes reality. How long have you been running course careers? At the beginning point, what was your biggest challenge and where are you at today? So let's talk more about the beginning point. I assume getting students was probably a big challenge, but talk to me about maybe what your biggest challenge you had to overcome was.
So I'd say it took a really long time to start the business. The initial product, the MVP, was non-technical. So all it was a Google Doc listing all the different resources and links to it to learn sales development.
Yep.
And then I posted on Reddit saying, if anyone doesn't have a degree and wants to get into sales development, I have this experience. I'm going to personally teach you it and see if I can help you land a job. Because I didn't even know, would an employer like hire people without degrees, or was I the exception? That was a big hypothesis for me. So I got people from a couple people from Reddit to reach out to me saying, "Hey, I don't have a degree and I want to get into tech sales." It's like, okay, I'm going to personally train you completely free. And I met with them weekly. It was like 4 people weekly. They went through the Google Doc. I talked to them on a weekly basis, and every single one ended up getting a job in tech sales. And I was like, wow, this employers do care. If your education matches the job description, they could care less about a degree. So that proved that hypothesis. And then from there, I started a WordPress website with like just all, not no code LMS. I created all of the course content myself, put it on the WordPress website, and I started charging $500 for that. I had some testimonials on the website from the 4 people I helped get jobs for free, and that kind of kickstarted the business. I'd say from the first dollar we made, so the first time we ever made any money as a company, the next 12 months we made 9 million. So we went from 0 to 9 million in 1 year. So it was like, 0, 0, 0. I think I was living in my parents' basement, didn't make a single dollar for over 2 years. And then the next year we went to 9 million.
What was the biggest thing that made that turn? Was it just like proving the concept, getting the testimonials, having a tested method that works, and then once you had that, you could just attack?
I'd say return on capital. So I'd say my background is really in finance. So I understand how to turn $1 into a lot of dollars.
Okay.
Once I started making money, I was able to very systematically reinvest it into the highest return on capital and, grow exponentially, hire people who then hired people who then invested capital. And, it grew really, really fast.
I'm
Um,
I'm interested to learn about your thoughts on SDR. I've got my own thoughts on being an SDR. What do you feel, in your opinion, is the most important skill a person who's going to be successful as an SDR has to have?
Oof. So we've helped thousands of people get SDR jobs, and a lot of those people turned out to not be a good fit, even though they knew the material very well.
Okay.
And I'd say it's just raw motivation to succeed. Like
Okay.
if you're not willing to do whatever it takes to win, like you will give up. Kind of like being an entrepreneur. Like if you're only in it just for the surface level, like status and money, you'll give up. You have to have some deeper level of motivation that's gonna allow you to do what others aren't willing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, Troy, take me through your mindset on this. Because as a lot of entrepreneurs have to do is you like you said, you take zeros for a little while until you finally turn the corner and start making some money off that. And I think a lot of people don't understand that when you go into entrepreneurship, is that you're not going to make money at first, more than likely. It's going to be a struggle for a little while. So take me through your mindset on those months where it's $0, $0, $0, you're in your parents' basement and you're thinking like, all right, so I'm going to turn this corner. And how do you keep up with that when things aren't going like you plan?
So I always thought about it, the risk adjusted opportunity cost. So I'd say, okay, I believe in this business, even though no one else does, and everyone thinks, I'm a loser. All my friends think I'm a loser. Girlfriend broke up with me because I don't have enough money to take her on dates, or I did, I just didn't want to spend it. So, and I live in my parents' basement. It's 2 years has gone by. I haven't made any, like, zero progress, not a single dollar in the bank, no customers. It's like my whole relatives are like, why is your son living in your basement? Why doesn't he go to college? Why doesn't he get a job? Just I look like a loser, honestly, from the outside. But in my mind, I thought, okay, I really believe in this business. I think worst case scenario, at least have a 20% chance of making it. And if I make it, I'm in a winner take all market. Like the college market, it's a networked market. So one company really wins everything. So if I make it, I get extraordinarily rich. So let's say I make a billion, I have a 20% chance of making $1 billion on a risk adjusted basis. By default, I'm making $200 million. So I always look everything on a risk adjusted basis. So any decision I make, I say, okay, what's the upside and what's my chance of achieving that upside? And that's my base case that I'm making my decision on. Um, so I never, think about like, okay, well, there's a chance that I might not make it. It's like, well, what if I do make it? That's the decision I'm making.
So right now for course careers, is tech sales, SDR still kind of your bread and butter, or have you evolved into adding extra things to course careers?
I mean, yeah, it's tech sales isn't our biggest course anymore. Actually, IT is, and I mean, we have 9 new courses on the way right now, all across the trades, construction, supply chain. So we're expanding at the same time across every single industry. So that's a good thing about once you start making money, you can invest it very profitably. So I've been able to deploy capital at a very fast rate. So it's just expansion across all fronts. We have managers who then manage other people, who then hire other people. It's like, I mean, once you have a successful business in a good industry, then you can expand rapidly.
Yeah, and Matt and I have a similar version of that in a different scale. And one of the things we firmly believe is the build from within organizational structure, utilizing the access of the talent that we have at our fingertips to be able to help leverage the success of our own business together as well. What would you say is your biggest challenge for the next 5 years? Talk me through kind of what you're envisioning the next big obstacle to be.
For us, the next 5 years, I mean, our business is very tied to the economy where we get people entry level jobs. It's like the reason why we went from 0 to 9 million is because we were in a tech boom, during COVID, where it's like every single company was hiring tech sales reps and everyone wanted to get into tech. And we were just in the perfect place at the perfect time. I think right now it's getting a lot harder to land entry level jobs. Like we teach UI UX, for example, in software development, extremely competitive to land an entry level job. We even publish it on the website that, hey, if you're going to enroll in this course, you better, be ready for what's to come. It's tough. So I think the external economy is a big concern of mine for entry level jobs. So right now we're expanding to all these other industries that are a little bit less competitive, like the trades. We're teaching plumbing, electrician, HVAC.
Okay.
So all these careers that people might have not wanted to do in 2021 when you could get into tech, now people are more interested in, and we're just gonna keep following the jobs.
It's interesting that you say trades because I've always thought if you teach sales, especially business development, like a trade, it could be something that could be taught, in a trade school environment if taught and effectively identified. So just to wrap things up here, talking with me, if somebody's interested in learning more about Course Careers, what's your value proposition to somebody who has just got out of high school? They don't think college is the route for them, but they want to get a career and they don't know what they want to do. What's the best next step, and how can Course Career help them?
Yeah, I mean, Course Careers is, I think, and I hope everyone else thinks it too, the best solution out there if you're wanting to start a career and you don't have experience or a degree. I mean, our courses are perfectly aligned with what employers are looking for. So we take a bunch of job descriptions, talk with a bunch of hiring managers, work backwards from that to create this course. The course is taught by someone who actually works in the industry. So not like, college professor that has never done the job before. So we have people who actually work in the industry teaching the course that perfectly aligns with what employers are looking for, always updated. Then we have a network of coaches on our platform who are actually working in the industry and then making additional money on the side, providing coaching to students going through the course. So it's just the most ideal and I think perfect solution for starting an entry-level career. And it works really well. I mean, a ton of people have landed jobs that way. And I'd encourage anyone to try to look for a better solution. And if they do find one or have an idea for one, please send me an email to Troy at Course Careers about it.
How do they get in contact? We should go to your website, send you that email. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm on email a lot. I mean, I probably get hundreds of emails a day, but I read every single one. So it's troy@coursecareers.com.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate your time today, man. I love hearing your story. It's an inspiring to see who you are and what you become and what you're building, man. I look forward to seeing you hit that $1 billion goal and not that $20 million goal, but it's exciting to hear.
I appreciate it, Matt.
Thank you,
All
Troy.
right.
Wanna hear you go.